You ever wish Earth just came with like an instruction manual? You know, a quick start guide to all its most critical systems? Well, that's pretty much what we're going to dive into today. Think of this as your rapid introduction to environmental management, the first few and most important pages of Earth's operating manual.
I mean, look at that. From way up here, our planet looks so perfect, right? So serene. But down on the ground, this beautiful, incredibly complex machine we call home, it operates on a really specific set of rules. And figuring out those rules, it's not just for scientists. It's the first step to making sure we don't, accidentally break the very system that keeps us all alive.
Okay, so any good manual starts with the basics, right? Know your hardware. So before we get into the software, the complicated stuff, let's just map out the physical layout of our planet, the foundational hardware that everything else runs on.
All right, first up, the 7 continents, Africa, Antarctica, Asia, and so on. They're literally the stage for all of human history. But get this, they cover less than 30% of the Earth's surface. That land-to-water ratio, it's a critical piece of our planet's hardware. It dictates pretty much everything, from our climate to how we trade with each other.
So what about the other 70+%? Well, that's the domain of our 5 massive oceans. Think of them as the planet's circulatory system and its climate control, all rolled into one. These huge bodies of salt water don't just separate the continents. They actually connect them, driving our weather patterns and keeping global temperatures in check.
And here it is, the whole picture, our global stage. This very specific arrangement of land and water is the physical foundation for everything that follows. So now that we've got a handle on the hardware, let's take a look at the software that brings it all to life.
Okay, so we've got the hardware mapped out. Now let's install the software, all those invisible systems and cycles that make life possible. These are the planet's essential life support programs, the things running in the background 24/7. Let's take a quick trip just straight up from the ground. We live and breathe down here in the troposphere. That's where all our weather happens. Go a little higher and you're in the stratosphere, home to that vital ozone layer, our planet's built-in sunscreen. And even higher, you've got the mesosphere and thermosphere. See, it's not just a stack of layers. It's this incredibly dynamic protective shield. And if you mess with one part, you can bet there are going to be consequences for the whole system.
All right, back down on the ground. Water is always on the move. When rain soaks into the Earth, we call that infiltration. It's basically the planet taking a long, slow drink to refill the groundwater that feeds our wells and springs. And without that, our underground reservoirs would just run dry.
But what happens when rain falls faster than the ground can soak it up, especially on, say, paved surfaces like roads and parking lots? You get runoff. This is the water that just flows right over the land, picking up all sorts of pollutants, and sometimes causing flash floods as it rushes into rivers and oceans.
And you can't forget about plants. They are absolutely key players here. Throughfall, that's the term for how a forest deals with rainfall, slowing it down as it drips from leaves to the ground. It sounds simple, but this process prevents soil from washing away. It just goes to show that every single tree is an active manager in the planet's water cycle.
Okay, so with all this life everywhere, how do we even begin to organize it? Well, we can kind of zoom in. At the biggest level, you've got an ecosystem. That's all the living things and the non-living stuff interacting. Zoom in a bit, and you find communities of different species living together. And zoom in one more time, and you've got populations of just a single species. It's this beautiful nested system for understanding the whole web of life.
All right, so we've got the hardware, we've got the software. But there's one more critical piece we have to introduce into this system. Us, the user. And our presence, it changes everything.
Now, to really get a handle on our impact, we have to start with a crucial fact. We are not all the same user, not even close. The World Bank actually classifies countries by income, and the gap is just staggering. In what they call low-income countries, or LICs, the average income per person is only about $1,000 a year. But in high-income countries, it can be more than 12 times that. This economic reality completely shapes a country's environmental footprint.
And that income gap, it translates into a totally different daily reality. I mean, in many low-income countries, just finding clean water is a daily struggle, and their economies often depend on exporting raw materials. Meanwhile, in high-income countries, clean water just flows from a tap, and our economies are built on manufacturing and services, often processing the very same raw materials that came from those LICs.
Yeah, and these pictures, they really show that divide more powerfully than I ever could with words. On one side, getting the resources you need is direct, it's local, it's manual. On the other side, it's all hidden behind this huge, complex, and super energy-intensive infrastructure.
It's a perfect visual of the two completely different ways humanity interacts with the planet's systems.
So how do we actually measure this difference in impact? Well, one of the key tools we use is the ecological footprint. It's a way of calculating how much of the planet's resources, land and water, your lifestyle actually requires. It's basically the final bill for everything you consume.
And here's the thing. When you start adding up billions of those individual ecological footprints, you run smack into the core challenge of environmental management. We are all living on one finite planet. The hardware has its limits.
And this is where we've got to get specific, because not all resources are the same. You've got your renewable resources, things like timber, or soil, or fresh water. They're part of a cycle. They can grow back or replenish. But then you have the non-renewable resources, like fossil fuels and minerals. And those, they're like a one-time inheritance. Once we use them up, they are gone. For good.
You know, we can actually bundle all of this together under one really powerful idea: natural capital. This is the total stock of our planet's wealth. We're talking every resource, every single system, from clean air to fossil fuels. It is, quite literally, our global inheritance.
And this brings us to what is maybe the most useful analogy in all of environmental management. Just think of our natural capital as a giant savings account. Living sustainably means you're living off the interest. You know, the clean water, the new forests that grow back, without ever touching the original money, the principal. The second we start draining that principal, we're bankrupting the future.
So there you have it. We've covered the hardware, the software, the user, and the hard limits of the whole system. We've just read the first few pages of Earth's operating manual. The question now isn't just what happens next. The real question is, what role are you going to play in writing the next chapter?